Imagine pulling a simple brown penny from your pocket and realizing it might be connected to one of the most dramatic moments in American coin history, a year when people feared money itself was about to change forever. That quiet little coin could be a 1964 D Lincoln penny, and its story is far bigger than its size. The 1964 D Mint Mark Lincoln penny is a 1-cent coin struck in the United States during a time of national uncertainty. On the surface, it looks familiar and ordinary, with the profile of President Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back. But behind that familiar design is a year filled with panic, hoarding, and one of the most important transitions in American coinage history. This penny was produced at the Denver Mint, which is why it carries the small D Mint mark just below the date. To understand why this coin matters, we have to step back into the early 1960s. In 1964, America was facing a serious coin shortage. People across the country were pulling coins out of circulation and saving them at home. The reason was simple. The metal inside many coins was becoming more valuable than the face value printed on them. Silver prices were rising, and rumors were spreading that the government would soon remove silver from coins entirely. As fear grew, everyday Americans started hoarding change. At the same time, the nation was still in mourning after the assassination of President John F. Kennedy in late 1963. Trust in institutions was shaken, and money, something people rely on daily, suddenly felt uncertain. The U.S. Mint responded by striking massive numbers of coins to keep the economy moving. In 1964, the Lincoln cent was produced in huge quantities, especially at the Denver facility, which worked non-stop to meet demand. The Lincoln penny design itself had already become a symbol of stability by 1964. The front of the coin features Abraham Lincoln, a design first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of his birth. Lincoln was the first real person ever placed on a regularly circulating U.S. coin, and by the 1960s, his image had become deeply tied to American identity. The back of the 1964 penny still shows the Lincoln Memorial, a design that debuted in 1959. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny seated statue of Lincoln inside the memorial, making it one of the most detailed coin designs of its time. The 1964 D Lincoln penny is made of 95% copper and 5% zinc and tin. This is important because just a few years later, rising copper prices would force the government to change the metal composition of the penny. In that sense, the 1964 D penny represents the end of an era. It is one of the last Lincoln cents made almost entirely of copper, giving it a solid weight and rich color that modern pennies no longer have. At first glance, this coin does not seem rare at all. Over 3 billion Lincoln pennies were struck in Denver in 1964. That number alone makes people assume the coin cannot be valuable. But coin collecting is not just about how many were made. It is about condition, details, and mistakes that happened during the minting process. This is where the story gets interesting. Because the Denver Mint was producing coins at record speed, quality control was not always perfect. Some 1964 D pennies left the mint with noticeable errors. These errors are what collectors search for today. One of the most popular is the double die error, where parts of the design appear doubled, especially in the lettering or date. This happens when the coin die receives a misaligned impression during production. Another sought-after error is an off-center strike, where the design is not properly centered on the coin blank. Some 1964 D pennies were struck with clipped planchets, meaning a small piece of the coin is missing because the metal strip was improperly cut. There are also repunched mint mark varieties, where the D mint mark was stamped more than once in slightly different positions. Each of these errors turns an ordinary penny into a unique collectible. Condition plays an even bigger role than errors. Most 1964 D pennies spent decades in circulation. They were dropped on sidewalks, stored in jars, and passed through countless hands. Finding one in worn condition is easy. Finding one in pristine, uncirculated condition is much harder. Coins that were saved right from the mint or stored carefully can still show full original luster, sharp details, and no signs of wear. In the world of coin collecting, grading matters. A 1964 D Lincoln penny in average circulated condition might be worth only a few cents. But the same coin in top condition can sell for surprisingly high prices. Pennies graded in near-perfect mint state have sold for hundreds and even thousands of dollars, especially when certified by professional grading services. There have been real auction examples that prove this point. High-grade 1964 D Lincoln pennies with strong red color and no wear have sold for several $1,000s at major coin auctions. Error varieties have also brought impressive results. A well-documented double die example can sell for hundreds, depending on the strength of the doubling and overall condition. These are real sales, not rumors, and they show how an everyday coin can become a serious collectible. Of course, with value comes the risk of fakes and altered coins. Some people attempt to add a D mint mark to a Philadelphia penny, or they try to create fake errors. Identifying a genuine 1964 D Lincoln penny starts with weight and metal. An authentic coin should weigh about 3.11 grams and have the solid feel of copper. The mint mark should look natural, with smooth edges and proper placement beneath the date. Any mint mark that looks scratched, raised strangely, or out of position should raise suspicion. Real errors also follow patterns. Genuine double die coins show doubling that is part of the design itself, not damage caused later. Damage from tools or machines often looks messy or uneven, while true mint errors appear clean and consistent. When in doubt, serious collectors rely on professional grading services to authenticate and encapsulate valuable coins. There are also some fun and surprising details about the 1964 D Lincoln penny that many people do not know. Because of the massive hoarding that year, Congress actually passed a law allowing the mint to continue striking coins dated 1964 even into 1965. This was done to discourage collectors from hoarding newer dates. As a result, some 1964 dated coins were actually struck later than people realize, adding another layer of mystery to the year. Another interesting fact is that the Lincoln Memorial design used on this penny would eventually be retired in 2008. Today, the 1964 D penny represents a classic look that many collectors feel nostalgic about. It reminds them of a time when coins felt heavier, richer, and more permanent. Collectors love the 1964 D Lincoln penny not because it is rare in numbers, but because it tells a story. It tells the story of a nation worried about its money, of a mint working at full speed, and of the final years of traditional copper coinage. It is a coin that bridges everyday life and history, something you could have received in change at a grocery store, yet something that now sits in collections and auction catalogs. For new collectors, this penny is often a starting point. It is affordable, widely available, and full of learning opportunities. For advanced collectors, it is a challenge to find the best examples, the sharpest strikes, and the most dramatic errors. That wide appeal keeps interest in the 1964 D Lincoln penny strong even decades after it was made. So the next time you see a small brown penny dated 1964 with a tiny D under the date, do not dismiss it too quickly. Hold it, turn it over, and think about where it has been. That coin may have passed through the hands of someone during one of the most uncertain years in American coin history. It may be common, or it may be something special waiting to be discovered. Sometimes the most fascinating pieces of history are not locked away in museums or vaults. Sometimes they are hiding in plain sight, right there in your pocket, quietly carrying a story that is still being told. Most people have held this penny without realizing it, spent it without thinking twice, or left it forgotten in a jar. Yet a single tiny detail can turn an ordinary-looking coin into something collectors search for years. Today's story is about a coin that hides its secrets in plain sight. The 1970 D Lincoln penny, a small piece of copper with a surprisingly big story. The 1970 D Lincoln penny is a 1-cent coin struck in the United States and marked with a small D mint mark beneath the date. That tiny letter tells us it was made at the Denver Mint, one of the most important coin-producing facilities in the country. At first glance, this penny looks just like millions of others. It shows the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back. But when you slow down and really look at it, this coin represents a turning point in American history, economics, and even metal itself. To understand why the 1970 D penny matters, we have to go back to the late 1960s and early 1970s. The United States was going through major changes. Inflation was rising, the cost of metals was increasing, and the government was struggling to keep everyday coins affordable to produce. Pennies, which were once made of solid copper, were becoming more expensive to strike than their face value. In 1970, the country was right on the edge of a major change in how cents would be made. The Denver Mint produced more than 2 billion pennies in 1970. That sounds like a huge number, and it is, but quantity does not always mean unimportant. In fact, this massive production run makes the story even more interesting. The 1970 D penny was part of the final generation of mostly copper Lincoln cents. Just a few years later, the metal composition would change forever. In 1970, the penny was made of 95% copper and 5% zinc. This gave the coin its warm, rich color and solid feel. If you hold one of these pennies and compare it to a modern penny, you can actually feel the difference. Modern pennies are mostly zinc with a thin copper coating, but the 1970 D penny still carries the weight and sound of real copper. The design of the coin also reflects an important era. The portrait of Lincoln on the front was originally created by Victor David Brenner in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. By 1970, this design had already been in use for more than 60 years, making it one of the longest-running designs in U.S. coinage history. On the back, the Lincoln Memorial design, introduced in 1959, shows the famous Washington, D.C. monument, with a tiny seated statue of Lincoln visible between the columns if you look closely enough. Now here is where the story gets more exciting. Not all 1970 D pennies are the same. Some were struck better than others, some survived in better condition, and a few contain errors that collectors go crazy for. One of the most talked about varieties from this era involves striking issues, weak details, and die-related mistakes that happened during the high-speed production process. The Denver Mint was producing coins at an incredible pace in 1970. Machines were running non-stop and dies wore out quickly. When a die begins to wear, the details on the coin can become softer, letters may appear thinner, and parts of the design may look less sharp. While this might seem like a flaw, collectors often find these variations fascinating because they show the human and mechanical side of coin production. Some 1970 D pennies are known for weak strikes, especially on Lincoln's hair and the lettering. Others show die cracks or small raised lines caused by stressed metal dies. These features are not damage from circulation but are part of the coin as it left the mint. For collectors, that distinction makes all the difference. Another reason the 1970 D penny draws attention is condition. Because so many were made, most entered circulation and were heavily used. Finding one today that looks almost brand new is surprisingly difficult. Coins that were saved early, kept in rolls, or stored carefully can still show bright red copper surfaces. These are known as red pennies, and they are far more valuable than brown or darkened examples. So why is this penny valuable if so many were made? The answer lies in survival and demand. Millions were produced, but very few remain in high-grade condition. Collectors compete fiercely for the best examples, especially those with sharp details, original luster, and no damage. A common circulated 1970 D penny might be worth only a cent or two, but a pristine example can be worth much more at major coin auctions. High-grade 1970 D pennies have sold for impressive prices. Coins graded in near-perfect condition by professional grading services have reached values that surprise many people. Auction records from respected companies like Heritage Auctions show that top-quality examples can sell for hundreds of dollars, especially when certified and authenticated. Even more valuable are coins with unusual errors. A penny struck off-center with a double design or with other mint-related mistakes can attract strong bidding. These errors are rare because most flawed coins were caught and destroyed before leaving the mint. When one slips through, it becomes a collector's treasure. Of course, with higher values comes the risk of fakes or altered coins. Learning how to identify a genuine 1970 D penny is essential. The first thing to check is the mint mark. On a real coin, the D is small, clean, and well-formed, located just below the date. Added mint marks often look irregular, misplaced, or poorly shaped. Weight is another important clue. A genuine 1970 D penny should weigh about 3.11 grams. If the coin is significantly lighter, it may be damaged or not made of the correct metal. The sound test can also help. When dropped gently on a hard surface, a real copper penny produces a higher, ringing tone compared to modern zinc pennies. Magnification is your best friend. Under a simple magnifying glass, you can examine the edges, lettering, and surfaces for signs of tampering. Tool marks, unusual scratches, or inconsistent textures can indicate that a coin has been altered to appear more valuable then it really is. One surprising fact about the 1970 penny is how closely it connects to the end of an era. Just 2 years later, in 1972, the U.S. Mint would begin experimenting more seriously with alternative metals. By 1982, the familiar copper penny would be replaced by the zinc-based version we use today. This makes the 1970 penny a quiet reminder of a time when even the smallest coin had real intrinsic value. Another fun detail is that many people unknowingly saved these pennies thinking all old coins would become valuable. While most did not, the habit of saving coins led to the preservation of some exceptional examples. Those carefully stored rolls are the reason top-grade coins still appear at auctions today. Collectors love the 1970 Lincoln penny because it combines accessibility with depth. It is easy to find, affordable to start collecting, yet complex enough to keep experts interested. From metal composition to minting quirks, from condition rarity to historical context, this single cent offers layers of meaning. For new collectors, it represents a perfect entry point into the world of numismatics. For experienced collectors, it is a challenge to find the best possible example. And for everyday people, it is proof that even the smallest object in your pocket can carry history, craftsmanship, and hidden value. As you look at your change differently after hearing this story, remember that coins like the 1970 penny were not meant to be special. They were designed to be spent, passed hand to hand, and eventually worn away. The fact that some survived in remarkable condition is almost accidental, and that accident is what makes them special today. So the next time you come across an old penny, take a moment to look closer. Check the date, find the mint mark, and imagine the journey that coin has taken over more than 50 years. It may not make you rich, but it will connect you to a moment in American history when copper still ruled the smallest denomination. And who knows, the penny you almost overlooked might be the one that sparks a lifelong interest in collecting, history, and the quiet stories hidden in everyday objects. Most people walk past this coin every day without a second glance, but what if I told you that one small detail on a 1971 penny could completely change how collectors see it, and in some cases, how much it's worth? Today we're diving into the story of the 1971 mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin that looks ordinary at first, but carries a fascinating history, subtle details, and surprising collector interest that continues to grow even decades later. The 1971 Lincoln penny is a 1-cent coin, produced in the United States during a time of major change. The small letter S under the date tells us it was struck at the San Francisco Mint, a facility known not for mass circulation pennies at this time, but for making special coins with higher quality finishes. This single letter is what separates this penny from millions of others made the same year. To understand why this coin exists, we need to step back into the early 1970s. The United States was going through economic pressure, rising inflation, and major changes in coin production. Copper prices were climbing, and the U.S. Mint was already looking ahead to how long it could continue producing traditional copper-based pennies. In 1971, pennies were still made primarily of copper, but the warning signs were there. The Lincoln penny itself had already been part of American life for more than 60 years by this point. Introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of Abraham Lincoln, it became the first U.S. coin to feature a real historical person. By 1971, the Lincoln cent was deeply familiar, trusted, and symbolic of everyday American commerce. What made 1971 special is where the coin was made and how. That year, pennies came from 3 mints: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Philadelphia coins had no mint mark, Denver coins carried a D, and San Francisco coins carried the S. But here's the key detail. In 1971, the San Francisco Mint did not produce pennies for regular circulation. Instead, it struck pennies almost exclusively for collector-proof sets. That means the 1971 Lincoln penny was made with collectors in mind from the very beginning. Proof coins are struck differently than normal coins. They are made using specially prepared dies, polished blanks, and higher striking pressure. The result is a sharper design, mirror-like surfaces, and stronger details. The metal composition of the 1971 penny is another important piece of its story. It is made of 95% copper and 5% zinc, the classic bronze formula used for decades. This gives the coin its rich reddish tone when well preserved. Not long after this period, copper would become too expensive, and pennies would change forever. In that sense, the 1971 U.S penny belongs to the final chapter of the traditional copper cent era. The design is the familiar Lincoln portrait on the front, created by Victor David Brenner. Lincoln faces right, with the words "In God We Trust" along the top, "Liberty" to the left, and the date 1971 to the right, with the small S mint mark just below the date. On the back, we see the Lincoln Memorial, a design that had been introduced in 1959. If you look closely, you can actually see Lincoln's statue inside the memorial, making this one of the few U.S. coins to show the same person on both sides. On proof versions, the details of the Lincoln Memorial are especially sharp. The steps, columns, and inner statue are far clearer than on circulation pennies. This clarity is one of the reasons collectors are drawn to the 1971 U.S penny. Now let's talk about errors, because this is where curiosity really builds. While most 1971 U.S pennies were carefully produced, some still escaped with mistakes. One of the most famous is the double die obverse, where parts of the lettering or date appear doubled due to a misaligned die during production. These errors are subtle, but when confirmed, they can dramatically increase a coin's value. Another sought-after variety is the cameo proof. A cameo coin has frosted designs that stand out strongly against mirrored backgrounds. Deep cameo examples show an even stronger contrast and are especially prized by collectors. Not every proof penny shows this effect clearly, which makes strong cameo examples more desirable. So why would a penny that was made for collectors be valuable at all? After all, millions were produced. The answer lies in condition, rarity within quality levels, and long-term demand. While many proof pennies were saved, not all survived in perfect condition. Proof coins are surprisingly easy to damage with fingerprints, scratches, or improper storage. Professional grading services carefully examine these coins and assign them grades. The highest grades, especially those labeled as Proof 69 or Proof 70, are extremely difficult to achieve. A 1971 U.S penny graded Proof 70 with deep cameo contrast can command impressive prices compared to its face value. Real-world sales show this clearly. High-grade 1971 U.S proof pennies have sold at auctions for tens, and in some cases hundreds of dollars, depending on eye appeal and rarity of the grade. Error varieties and exceptional deep cameo examples often bring even more attention from serious collectors. It's important to know how to identify a real 1971 U.S Lincoln penny. First, check the mint mark. The S should be clean, sharp, and properly positioned below the date. On proof coins, the surfaces should be reflective like a mirror. If the coin looks dull or grainy, it may be a circulation strike or damaged proof. Weight is another clue. A genuine 1971 penny should weigh about 3.11 grams. Significant differences may indicate damage or a counterfeit. Also look closely at the edges. Proof coins usually have sharper rims than regular pennies. Counterfeits do exist, though they are uncommon for this coin. Most fake examples involve altered mint marks, where an S is added to a Philadelphia coin. Under magnification, these added mint marks often look rough, misshapen, or incorrectly placed. One fun fact about the 1971 U.S penny is that it represents a moment when the San Francisco Mint had fully transitioned away from everyday coin production. Once known for producing coins for circulation, San Francisco had become the home of proof coinage, focusing on quality rather than quantity. Another surprising detail is how many of these coins were broken out of proof sets over the years. Some collectors separated individual coins, which means finding a complete, original proof set today can be just as interesting as finding a perfect single penny. Collectors love the 1971 U.S Lincoln penny because it tells a quiet but important story. It marks the end of an era for copper cents, reflects the rising importance of collector-focused coinage, and showcases the beauty that even a 1-cent coin can have when carefully made. It's also a reminder that value isn't always about rarity alone. It's about condition, history, and the emotional connection people have with an object. A penny that once sat untouched in a proof set now carries decades of history and fascination. Today, collectors continue to seek out the best examples of this coin, searching for deep cameo contrast, flawless surfaces, and unusual errors. Even new collectors are drawn to it because it's affordable, visually striking, and rich in meaning. So the next time you hear the word penny, Don't dismiss it too quickly. That small copper coin from 1971, marked with a tiny S, might just be a quiet survivor of a changing America, waiting for someone to notice its story. And if you ever come across a 1971 Lincoln penny, take a closer look. Under the shine and copper glow, you might be holding a piece of history that proves even the smallest coins can leave a lasting impression. Most people walk past this coin every single day without a second glance. Yet one small detail on it could quietly change how you see pocket change forever. The 1975 D Mint Mark Lincoln penny looks ordinary, but its story is anything but. This coin is a 1-cent piece struck in 1975 at the Denver Mint, identified by the small letter D just below the year. It belongs to the long-running Lincoln Cent series, a design that has been part of American life for generations. At first glance, it seems like the kind of penny you might toss into a jar or leave behind on a counter. But collectors know that certain years, mint marks, and tiny imperfections can turn an everyday coin into something far more interesting. The Lincoln penny itself has deep roots in American history. It was first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of Abraham Lincoln, making it the first U.S. circulating coin to feature a real person. By the time 1975 arrived, the Lincoln cent had already been in circulation for more than 6 decades, passing through wars, economic changes, and cultural shifts. The country was still adjusting after the early 1970s, and inflation was a real concern. The humble penny continued to play its role in daily transactions, even as its buying power slowly faded. In 1975, the United States Mint produced hundreds of millions of pennies to meet demand. The Denver facility, officially known as the Denver Mint, was one of the busiest mints in the nation. Pennies from Denver carried the D Mint mark, while those from Philadelphia were struck without a mint mark. This simple letter is one of the first things collectors look for because it tells the story of where the coin was born. The 1975 D Lincoln penny is made from a copper-based alloy consisting of 95% copper and 5% zinc. This was the standard composition for pennies at the time, giving the coin its familiar reddish-brown color when new. Decades later, many examples have toned to darker brown shades, while others retain a bright red appearance if they were carefully stored. The color of the coin plays a major role in its appeal and value today. On the front of the coin, Lincoln's portrait faces right, a design created by sculptor Victor David Brenner. His initials, VDB, can be found subtly on the coin, a small signature that collectors enjoy spotting. The word liberty appears behind Lincoln's head, while in God we trust arches above. Below the portrait sits the date 1975, with the D Mint mark just beneath it. The reverse side features the Lincoln Memorial, which was used on pennies from 1959 through 2008. Inside the memorial, if you look very closely, you can even see a tiny statue of Lincoln seated inside, a detail that surprises many people when they notice it for the first time. At face value, the 1975 D penny is worth 1 cent. But value in the coin world is not just about age. It is about condition, rarity, and sometimes pure chance. Because so many of these pennies were minted, most circulated examples are common. However, collectors are not searching for the worn, scratched coins that live their lives in cash registers. They are searching for the best survivors, especially those with unusual characteristics. One reason this penny draws attention is the possibility of minting errors. Errors happen when something goes wrong during the striking process. In 1975, the mint was operating at high speed, and small mistakes could slip through. Some 1975 D pennies show off-center strikes, where the design is not perfectly aligned. Others may have weak strikes, doubled lettering, or die cracks. While most errors are minor, a clearly visible error can significantly increase a coin's value, especially if it is dramatic and easy to see without magnification. Another factor that adds interest is the coin's condition. Collectors often describe pennies using color terms like red, red-brown, and brown. A red penny still shows most of its original copper color and is usually one that never circulated. These are the coins that can command higher prices. A 1975 D penny in average circulated condition might only be worth a few cents, but a flawless red example graded by a professional service can sell for much more. Auction records show that top-quality 1975 D Lincoln pennies have sold for surprising amounts. In competitive auctions, coins graded in near-perfect condition have reached prices ranging from tens to even hundreds of dollars. These are not ordinary pocket change coins. They are carefully preserved examples that survive decades without wear, often pulled straight from mint rolls and stored away by collectors who knew their potential. Identifying a genuine 1975 D penny is straightforward, but it requires attention to detail. Start by checking the date and the mint mark. The D should be clearly visible beneath the year. Next, look at the weight. A genuine copper-based penny from this era should weigh about 3.11 grams. A significant difference could indicate damage or an altered coin. Examine the surface closely. Genuine coins have sharp details and consistent texture, while counterfeit or altered coins may show unusual marks, incorrect fonts, or uneven surfaces. Magnification can help reveal important clues. Look at the edges of the letters and numbers. On authentic coins, they are crisp and well-defined, especially on higher-grade examples. Be cautious of coins that appear too perfect in unusual ways, as some altered coins are made by modifying common dates to resemble rarer ones. When in doubt, professional coin grading services offer authentication and grading, giving collectors peace of mind. There are also fun facts that make the 1975 D penny even more interesting. Because it is made mostly of copper, its metal value fluctuates with copper prices, though melting pennies is illegal. Many people don't realize that the metal inside a pre-1982 penny can be worth more than 1 cent. Another surprising detail is how many of these coins were saved in rolls during the 1970s, when people still believed copper pennies might disappear. As a result, uncirculated examples still surface today, hidden away for decades. Collectors love this coin not because it is rare in numbers, but because it represents a moment in time. It comes from the last full decade when pennies were made primarily of copper. It carries a classic design that many people associate with childhood memories, piggy banks, and change jars. For new collectors, it is an affordable entry into the hobby. For advanced collectors, finding a top-grade example or a dramatic error is a rewarding challenge. The 1975 D Lincoln penny reminds us that value is not always obvious. Sometimes it is hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone curious enough to look closer. That small D beneath the date tells a story of where the coin was made, the era it came from, and the hands it passed through. The next time you come across a penny from 1975, take a moment before you spend it. Look at its color, its details, and its tiny imperfections. You might be holding more than just a cent. And even if it never makes you rich, it can still connect you to a fascinating chapter of American history, all from a coin small enough to fit in the palm of your hand. Imagine finding a simple brown penny in your pocket and discovering it quietly carries the story of an entire era in American history. A coin so common it was overlooked for decades. Yet today it makes collectors stop, look twice, and sometimes pay far more than 1 cent. This is the story of the 1979 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin most people have spent without a second thought. The 1979 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is a 1-cent coin produced in the United States during a time of change, uncertainty, and economic pressure. When people hear no-mint mark, it doesn't mean the coin is missing something by accident. It simply means it was made at the main mint facility in Philadelphia, which did not place a mint mark on pennies at that time. These coins entered everyday circulation, passed through countless hands, and became part of daily American life. To understand this penny, we need to travel back to 1979. The United States was dealing with inflation, rising gas prices, and major shifts in industry. Despite all of that, the nation still needed billions of pennies for commerce. That year, the Philadelphia Mint struck over 4 billion Lincoln cents. Yes, billions. This was one of the highest production years in U.S. penny history. The goal was simple: keep coins flowing so businesses could operate smoothly during a challenging economic period. The design of the coin was already familiar to Americans. On the front, or obverse, is the portrait of Abraham Lincoln, a design first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of his birth. By 1979, this portrait had become one of the most recognized images in American money. Lincoln faces right with the word liberty behind him and the year 1979 in front. Above his head are the words "In God We Trust," a phrase that had been part of U.S. coinage for generations. On the reverse side, The coin features the Lincoln Memorial, a design introduced in 1959. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny seated Lincoln statue inside the memorial. This detail is so small that many people never notice it, even after years of handling these coins. Above the memorial are the words United States of America, and below it is 1 cent, clearly stating the coin's value. The 1979 no-mint mark penny is made primarily of copper. At that time, pennies were composed of about 95% copper and 5% zinc. This is important because just a few years later, in 1982, the U.S. Mint would change the penny's composition to mostly zinc due to rising copper costs. That makes the 1979 penny part of the last generation of traditional copper cents, something collectors care deeply about today. At first glance, this coin seems ordinary, so why do people talk about it now? The answer lies in condition, errors, and survival. Even though billions were made, most were heavily used. They were dropped, scratched, bent, and worn down over decades. Finding a 1979 no-mint mark penny today in pristine, uncirculated condition is far more difficult than the high mintage numbers suggest. Another reason collectors pay attention to this coin is minting errors. Errors happen when something goes wrong during the striking process, and even a small mistake can dramatically increase a coin's value. Some 1979 pennies were struck slightly off-center, meaning the design is not perfectly aligned. Others show double details, where parts of the lettering or numbers appear faintly repeated. These errors were not intentional, and that makes them fascinating. There are also cases where pennies from 1979 show weak strikes, where certain details are softer or less defined due to worn dies. While minor weak strikes may not add much value, dramatic examples can be desirable to collectors who specialize in mint errors. Each error tells a story about how the coin was made and what happened in the mint on that day. So, is the 1979 no-mint mark penny rare? In everyday circulated condition, the answer is no. You might still find one in pocket change. However, rarity in the coin world is not just about how many were made. It's about how many survive in excellent condition. A bright, red copper 1979 penny with no wear is surprisingly scarce today, and scarcity drives demand. When it comes to value, most circulated examples are worth only 1 to 5 cents. But the story changes quickly when condition improves. Uncirculated 1979 no-mint mark pennies can sell for several dollars, especially if they retain their original red copper color. Professionally graded coins, sealed in protective holders and rated for quality, have sold for much more. At auctions, top-grade examples have reached prices that surprise many people. A near-perfect 1979 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, graded at the highest levels, has sold for hundreds of dollars. Error examples, especially dramatic double dies or off-center strikes, can also sell for significant premiums depending on the severity and visibility of the mistake. Identifying a real 1979 no-mint mark penny is straightforward if you know what to look for. First, check the date. It should clearly read 1979. Then look below the date. If there is no letter like D or S, it means the coin was made in Philadelphia. Next, examine the weight. A genuine 1979 copper penny should weigh about 3.11 grams. A digital scale can help confirm this. Also look closely at the color. Authentic copper pennies have a warm reddish or brown tone, not a silvery appearance. Be cautious of altered coins. Some people attempt to change dates or add fake errors to increase value. Use a magnifying glass to inspect the numbers and lettering for signs of tampering. Another helpful step is comparing your coin to verified examples online or in coin guides. If you believe you have a valuable error or an unusually high-grade coin, consider having it evaluated by a professional grading service or a trusted local coin dealer. There are also some fun and surprising facts about the 1979 penny. Even though it's made of copper, its metal value alone is more than 1 cent, which is one reason the U.S. Mint eventually changed the composition. It's also a coin that many people born in the late 1970s and early 1980s remember seeing everywhere during childhood, making it a nostalgic piece for a whole generation. Collectors today love the 1979 no-mint mark Lincoln penny because it represents the end of an era. It's part of the last group of true copper pennies. It carries a classic design, and it connects directly to everyday American life during a turbulent economic period. It's not flashy or gold, but it tells a quiet, honest story. This coin also reminds collectors that value can hide in plain sight. You don't always need an ancient coin or a rare gold piece to find something meaningful. Sometimes, history sits unnoticed in a jar on a shelf or at the bottom of a drawer, so the next time you come across a simple 1979 penny with no mint mark, don't rush to spend it. Take a moment to look closer. That small coin may not make you rich overnight, but it carries decades of history, a few hidden surprises, and a reminder that even the most ordinary objects can become extraordinary when you understand their story. What if the penny sitting quietly in your pocket right now isn't ordinary at all, but a coin that tells a hidden story about American history, mistakes at the mint, and surprising collector demand that most people never notice? Today we're talking about the 1984 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin many Americans have handled without a second thought, yet one that holds a fascinating place in modern coin history. At first glance, it looks like just another everyday cent, but when you slow down and really study it, this penny reveals a mix of history, design changes, and rare errors that have turned some ordinary finds into highly sought-after collectibles. The 1984 Lincoln penny is part of the long-running Lincoln cent series, which began in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of the birth of Abraham Lincoln. By 1984, the Lincoln cent had already been in circulation for 75 years and had become one of the most familiar coins in American life. The phrase "no mint mark" means this penny was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, which traditionally did not place a mint mark on most coins during that era. In 1984. The United States was deep into a period of economic change. Inflation from the previous decade had affected the cost of producing coins, and the U.S. Mint was still adjusting to a major shift that happened just 2 years earlier. In 1982, pennies transitioned from mostly copper to a copper-plated zinc composition. The 1984 no-mint mark Lincoln penny was made with this newer structure, consisting of a zinc core coated with a thin layer of copper. This change helped keep production costs down while maintaining the familiar look and feel Americans were used to. The design of the 1984 penny follows the classic Lincoln Memorial style that had been in use since 1959. On the front, you see the dignified profile of Abraham Lincoln, a design originally created by Victor David Brenner. Above Lincoln's head is the word liberty, and in front of his face is the familiar motto, "In God We Trust." The year 1984 appears clearly beneath the portrait. On the back of the coin is the Lincoln Memorial, a powerful symbol of American history, with Lincoln's statue visible inside the building if you look closely enough. This reverse design would remain in use until 2008, making the 1984 penny part of a well-loved era for collectors. So why does a coin that was minted in huge numbers deserve attention? The answer lies in the details, especially errors and condition. Millions of 1984 no-mint mark pennies were produced at the Philadelphia Mint, which means most examples are worth only face value today. However, a small number of these coins were struck with noticeable mistakes, and those mistakes are what collectors search for. One of the most famous and valuable errors associated with the 1984 Lincoln penny is the doubled ear variety. This error occurred during the die-making process, causing Lincoln's ear to appear doubled when viewed under magnification. Unlike minor doubling that can be caused by wear or damage, this is a true mint error that happened before the coin was struck. When you see it clearly, it looks like Lincoln has an extra outline or shadow behind his ear. This small detail has made the 1984 doubled ear penny one of the most talked about modern Lincoln cent errors. Collectors value this error because it is both visible and dramatic, even to the untrained eye once you know what to look for. It also represents a moment when the minting process went slightly wrong, creating a limited number of coins that escaped into circulation. Over time, as more people became aware of this variety, demand increased while supply remained fixed. Beyond the doubled ear, the 1984 no-mint mark penny can also show other interesting characteristics. Because it is copper-plated zinc, damage can sometimes expose the gray zinc core beneath the copper surface. While this type of damage does not usually add value, it helps identify the coin's composition and era. Weighing the coin can also confirm authenticity, as these pennies typically weigh about 2.5 grams, lighter than older copper cents. Now let's talk about value, because that's what really sparks curiosity. A regular 1984 no-mint mark Lincoln penny in circulated condition is usually worth 1 cent, maybe 2 or 3 cents if it's especially clean. However, uncirculated examples with full original luster can sell for several dollars, especially if they have been carefully preserved. The real excitement comes with error coins. Authentic 1984 doubled-ear pennies have sold for impressive amounts at auctions and through private collectors. Depending on condition, verified examples have sold for hundreds of dollars, and in high-grade uncirculated condition, some have reached into the thousands. Coins graded by respected services often command the highest prices, as grading confirms both authenticity and condition. Collectors are drawn to these coins because they combine modern accessibility with genuine rarity. Unlike coins from the early 1900s that are expensive and hard to find, the 1984 penny feels approachable. There is a thrill in knowing that a valuable coin could still be discovered in a jar of change or an old collection tucked away in a drawer. Identifying a real 1984 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is straightforward, but identifying a valuable one takes patience. First, check the date and make sure there is no mint mark beneath the year. If there is no letter, it was made in Philadelphia. Next, examine Lincoln's ear closely using a magnifying glass or a jeweler's loupe. Look for clear doubling that appears as a separate raised outline, not flat or blurry doubling caused by wear. Be cautious of altered coins or misidentified damage. Some sellers may try to pass off machine doubling or postmint damage as a valuable error. True double dies show rounded, raised details that are consistent across the design. Comparing your coin to verified images from trusted sources can help you avoid mistakes. There are also fun and surprising facts about the 1984 penny that make it even more interesting. For example, many people don't realize that zinc pennies can corrode internally if the copper plating is damaged, leading to bubbling or blistering on the surface. While this usually lowers value, it gives insight into how modern coins age differently than older copper cents. Another interesting detail is how the Lincoln Memorial design includes a tiny seated Lincoln statue inside the building, making Lincoln one of the few people to appear twice on the same U.S. coin. This detail is present on the 1984 penny and adds to its charm and historical depth. Collectors today love the 1984 no-mint mark Lincoln penny because it represents a bridge between old and new. It carries the classic Lincoln imagery while reflecting modern minting technology and materials. Error varieties like the doubled ear remind collectors that even with advanced machinery, human and mechanical imperfections still play a role in coin production. This penny also appeals to new collectors because it's affordable to start with. You don't need a large budget to begin searching for 1984 pennies, and the possibility of finding something special keeps the hobby exciting. Experienced collectors appreciate it for the same reason. It proves that rarity isn't always about age, but about circumstance. As we come to the end of this story, the 1984 no-mint mark Lincoln penny stands as a reminder that hidden history can be found in the smallest places. A coin most people overlook can carry value, intrigue, and a connection to the past. The next time you see a simple brown penny dated 1984, take a moment to look closer. That ordinary coin might just be an extraordinary piece of American numismatic history waiting to be discovered. What if the penny hiding in your pocket right now was quietly telling a story worth far more than 1 cent? A story that most people walk past every single day without noticing. Today we're diving into a coin that almost everyone has seen, but very few have truly looked at. The 2002 mint mark Lincoln penny. At first glance, it seems ordinary, even boring. But once you understand where it came from, how it was made, and what makes certain examples stand out, this simple copper-colored coin starts to feel very different. The 2002 Lincoln penny is a United States 1-cent coin struck at the Denver Mint. The small letter D just below the date tells us where it was made. Millions of these pennies entered circulation during a time when America was quietly transitioning into a new century, a moment of change that collectors now look back on with growing interest. This coin belongs to the Lincoln Memorial series, a design that had already been in use for more than 4 decades by 2002, and yet was nearing the end of its long run. To understand this penny, we need to step back into the early 2000s. The year 2002 was a period of adjustment for the United States. The country was finding its footing after the turn of the millennium, technology was changing everyday life, and the U.S. Mint was still producing coins using methods and designs that would soon be replaced. The Lincoln Memorial reverse, first introduced in 1959, was still being used, but its days were numbered. Just 7 years later, in 2009, the memorial would disappear from the penny entirely. That makes the 2002 penny part of the final chapter of a historic design era. It represents one of the last normal Lincoln Memorial cents before special reverses and later the shield design took over. Coins like this often don't feel special at the time they're made, but history has a way of changing how we see everyday objects. The design itself is familiar but full of quiet detail. On the front, you see Abraham Lincoln facing to the right, a portrait originally created by Victor David Brenner. Above his head is the word liberty, and behind him is the phrase "In God We Trust." The date 2002 appears to the right, with the small D mint mark just below it. This tiny letter is easy to overlook, but it's one of the most important details on the coin. Flip it over, and you see the Lincoln Memorial. Look closely, and you'll notice something fascinating. Inside the memorial, between the columns, there is actually a tiny image of Lincoln seated. It's one of the few U.S. coins where the same person appears on both sides of the coin at the same time. Many people have carried this penny for years without ever noticing that detail. Now let's talk about what the coin is made of. By 2002, pennies were no longer made of solid copper. Instead, they were composed of 97.5% zinc with a thin copper coating. This change happened in 1982, but it still surprises people today. The 2002 penny looks like copper, feels like copper, but inside, it's mostly zinc. This metal composition plays a huge role in how the coin ages, how it tones, and how certain errors occur. And this is where things get interesting. While most 2002 pennies are common, some examples stand out dramatically. Errors and high-quality strikes can turn an everyday coin into something collectors actively search for. One of the most talked about errors for this year involves off-center strikes. These happen when the blank coin isn't properly aligned during the striking process. The result is a penny where part of the design is missing and part of the blank metal is exposed. If the date and mint mark are still visible, these coins can attract serious attention. Another sought-after error is the broad strike. This occurs when the coin is struck without the retaining collar, causing it to spread outward and appear wider than normal. Broad-struck 2002 pennies can look strange at first glance, but to collectors, they're clear signs of minting mistakes that escaped quality control. There are also die cracks and die chips. Over time, the metal dies used to strike coins can wear down or crack. When that happens, extra raised lines or blobs of metal can appear on the coin's surface. Some 2002 pennies show these features clearly, and collectors love them because each one is unique. Perhaps the most valuable versions of this coin, though, are not error coins at all. They are coins in exceptionally high condition. Most pennies from circulation are scratched, dull, and worn. But a 2002 penny that was never circulated, especially one graded at the highest levels, can be surprisingly valuable. Professional grading services use a scale that goes up to 70. Coins graded MS-67, MS-68, or higher are extremely difficult to find for modern pennies. In auctions, top-grade 2002 pennies have sold for amounts that shock people who think all modern pennies are worthless. While most are still worth 1 cent, the best examples can sell for tens or even hundreds of dollars, depending on demand and eye appeal. Collectors are often drawn to auction records because they show what people are actually willing to pay. Over the years, pristine 2002 pennies with sharp strikes, clean surfaces, and bright luster have achieved strong prices when certified. Error examples have sold for even more, especially when the error is dramatic and easy to see. So how do you tell if you have something special? Start with the basics. Check the date and look for the D mint mark under the year. Then examine the coin under good light. Look for doubling in the letters, cracks in the design, missing details, or unusual shapes. Pay close attention to the rim and the edges. Anything that looks strange or uneven could be a clue. Weight can also matter. A standard 2002 penny should weigh about 2.5 grams. A significant difference could indicate an error or damage. Magnification helps too. A simple jeweler's loupe can reveal details that the naked eye misses. When it comes to fakes, the good news is that counterfeits of 2002 pennies are rare. The coin itself is too common to justify mass forgery. However, altered coins do exist. Some people try to modify dates or add fake errors. That's why authentication and professional grading are so important for high-value examples. Point one surprising fact about the 2002 penny is just how many were made. The Denver Mint struck billions of pennies that year. That huge number is exactly why most people assume they're all worthless. But rarity in coin collecting isn't always about how many were made. It's about how many survived in top condition or with unusual features. Another fun detail is that this penny comes from the same era as some of the last truly pocket-heavy years in American life. Before digital payments took over, coins like this passed through countless hands, vending machines, and cash registers. Each one has its own unseen journey. Collectors today are increasingly interested in modern coins. Younger collectors, especially, are drawn to coins from their childhood or early adulthood. The 2002 penny fits perfectly into that category. It's familiar, affordable to collect in rolls, and still offers the thrill of discovery. There's also something satisfying about finding value in the ordinary. The idea that a penny you ignored for years could suddenly deserve a second look is powerful. It reminds people that history isn't just locked in museums. Sometimes it's sitting quietly in a jar on your desk that as the years pass, fewer high-quality examples remain. Coins get damaged, spent, or lost. That slow disappearance is what gradually changes a common coin into a desirable one. The 2002 Lincoln penny is still early in that journey, but collectors are already paying attention, as so the next time you see a penny dated 2002 with a small d under the year, don't rush past it. Turn it over. Look closely. Think about where it's been and what it represents. In that tiny piece of metal is a snapshot of America at the start of a new century, frozen in copper and zinc. And who knows, the next time you empty your pockets or sort through old change, you might find that this ordinary-looking penny has an extraordinary story waiting to be told. Most people walk past pennies every day without a second thought. But what if one ordinary-looking coin from 2003 could still be hiding a story, a mystery, and even real value right now in someone's pocket or coin jar? Today we're talking about the 2003 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin that millions of Americans have handled, spent, or saved without realizing what makes it special, why collectors still search for it, and how a few small details can completely change its value. The 2003 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is a United States 1-cent coin that was struck without a mint letter under the date. When a Lincoln penny from this year has no letter like D or S, it means it was made in Philadelphia. For many people, that sounds normal, even boring. But in the world of coin collecting, sometimes the most common-looking coins are the ones that tell the biggest stories. To understand this coin, we have to go back to the year 2003. America was changing fast. The country was deeply connected to technology. The internet was becoming part of daily life. And yet the Lincoln penny remained almost unchanged, still carrying the familiar face of Abraham Lincoln on the front. This was long before the penny redesigns of later years, and collectors now see 2003 as one of the final chapters of the classic Lincoln Memorial era. The penny itself was produced by the United States Mint, the same institution that has been making American coins for over 2 centuries. In 2003, pennies were struck at multiple locations, including Denver, San Francisco, and the Philadelphia facility known as the Philadelphia Mint. The key detail is this: Philadelphia pennies do not carry a mint mark, which is why collectors call it a no-mint mark coin. In terms of design, the 2003 Lincoln penny stayed true to tradition. On the front, you see Lincoln facing right, a design originally created by Victor David Brenner in 1909. This design had already survived wars, economic crashes, and generations of change. On the back of the coin is the Lincoln Memorial, a symbol that appeared on pennies from 1959 until 2008. If you look closely, you can even see Lincoln's statue inside the memorial, making it one of the few U.S. coins to feature the same person on both sides. The metal composition of the 2003 penny often surprises people. Many assume it is pure copper, but that changed decades earlier. By 2003, pennies were made mostly of zinc with a thin copper coating. Specifically, about 97.5% zinc and only 2.5% copper. This switch was done to save money, but it also created new possibilities for errors and variations, which collectors always watch for closely. Now here is where the story gets interesting. On the surface, the 2003 no-mint mark penny is extremely common. Billions were produced, and most are still worth just 1 cent in circulated condition. But value in coin collecting is not only about age or rarity in numbers. It's about condition, details, and mistakes that were never supposed to happen. Some 2003 no-mint mark pennies were struck with errors, and those errors are what collectors actively hunt. One of the most popular errors is the off-center strike, where the design is not properly aligned on the coin. Another is a broad strike, where the coin spreads wider than normal because it was struck without the collar that holds it in place. There are also double die errors, where parts of the lettering or date appear doubled because of a misalignment during the die-making process. Even small things can matter. A penny with unusually strong details, sharp edges, and no signs of wear can be worth many times its face value. Coins that look almost brand new, even after more than 20 years, are especially desirable. Collectors call these high-grade coins, and grading makes a huge difference in price. So how valuable can a 2003 no-mint mark Lincoln penny really be? In everyday circulated condition, it is usually worth only 1 cent. But uncirculated examples can sell for several dollars, especially if they are certified by a professional grading service. Coins graded in top condition, such as MS-67 or higher, have sold at auction for anywhere from $10 to over $50, depending on demand at the time. Error coins are where prices jump much higher. A genuine off-center or double die 2003 penny can sell for anywhere from $50 to several $100s. In rare cases, dramatic errors with clear visual impact have reached prices over $1,000. These are not everyday finds, but they do exist, and they are still being discovered. Collectors love real-world stories, and there have been cases where people found valuable 2003 pennies in pocket change, old jars, or rolls from the bank. That is part of the excitement. Unlike ancient coins locked away in museums, this penny could still be hiding in plain sight. Of course, with value comes the risk of fakes or misunderstandings. Many people believe they have a rare coin simply because it has no mint mark, but that alone does not make it valuable. To identify a real collectible example, start by checking the date and the area under it. If there is no letter, that is normal for Philadelphia coins. Next, look closely at the condition. Heavy wear, scratches, or discoloration usually mean low value. For error coins, magnification helps. Real double die errors show clear separation in letters or numbers, not just flat or blurry doubling caused by damage. Weight can also matter. A standard 2003 penny should weigh about 2.5 grams. A significant difference could indicate an error or, in some cases, damage or alteration. One fun fact about the 2003 penny is that it was minted during the final years before the Lincoln cent design changed dramatically. Just a few years later, special designs would celebrate Lincoln's life and legacy. Because of that, some collectors see the 2003 penny as part of the closing chapter of a long and familiar era. Another surprising detail is how modern pennies, including the 2003 issue, challenge our idea of old. While they don't look ancient, they are already over 2 decades old. For younger collectors, this penny can be a first step into the hobby, while older collectors enjoy finding pristine examples that have somehow survived untouched. Collectors today love the 2003 no-mint mark Lincoln penny not because it is rare in numbers, but because it represents possibility. It reminds people that valuable coins don't always come from the distant past. Sometimes value comes from condition, chance, and the simple fact that a machine made a tiny mistake at the wrong moment. As you look at your change, think about this. That plain brown penny from 2003 might not seem special at first glance. But with the right details, the right condition, or the right error, it could be worth far more than 1 cent. And even if it's not, it still carries a piece of American history, a familiar face, and a story that connects everyday life with the world of collectors. So the next time you hear that quiet clink of coins in your hand, don't rush to spend them. Take a closer look. Because sometimes, the most ordinary penny can turn out to be the one that makes you stop, wonder, and maybe even start a new collection of your own.